Is it possible that, in the 21st century, a massive Boeing 777 aircraft carrying 239 people could fly on one of the world's busiest air routes and then suddenly disappear? Was it just a plane crash or one of history's most mysterious incidents? Did the pilot deliberately divert the plane? Did someone hijack it? Did the plane suffer a technical malfunction? Or is the world still hiding the truth from us? March 8, 2014. A date that changed modern aviation history forever. That night, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 was scheduled to take off from Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, heading for Beijing, the capital of China. Everything seemed normal. The plane was a Boeing 777-2ER, a model considered one of the world's safest and most reliable aircraft. There were 227 passengers and 12 crew members, a total of 239 people on board. Among them were children, families, businessmen, students, and others seemingly embarking on a seemingly ordinary journey. Little did they know that a few hours later, their names would become part of history's greatest mystery. Captain Zari Ahmad Shah was in command of the plane, a 53-year-old veteran pilot with nearly 18,000 hours of flying experience. He was no novice or inexperienced pilot. Accompanying him was First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, just 27 years old. For him, this flight was one of the most significant international flights of his career. At around 12:41 a.m., MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Aiming. The first few minutes were completely normal. The weather was clear. No technical problems were reported. The plane was cruising toward its assigned altitude. Communication with air traffic control was also normal. But no one knew that this normality would last only a few minutes. The plane had already reached the South China Sea. It was about to leave Malaysian airspace and enter Vietnamese airspace when the last known words were heard from the cockpit. "Good night, Malaysian 370. A simple radio message. So simple that no one even noticed it at the time. But these words later became one of the most famous last messages in history. Minutes later, MH370 suddenly disappeared from radar. No distress call, no emergency signal, no MED message. Nothing. It was as if the plane had vanished into thin air. At first, air traffic control thought there might be a temporary communication glitch. Such minor incidents happen occasionally. But minutes passed, and MH370 remained unreturned. Concern grew. The Vietnamese control tower tried to contact the plane. There was no response. Other planes were asked to try to contact MH370, but silence followed. Then, another shocking revelation emerged. The plane hadn't just disappeared from radar. Its transponder had also been disabled. Now it's important to understand a very important point here. The transponder is the system that sends the aircraft's identity, altitude, and position to air traffic control. If this system were to go down, the plane could virtually disappear from normal civilian radar. And the most mysterious thing was that the transponder shut down suddenly. There was no technical warning, no gradual failure. This is where the incident suddenly began to transform from a simple accident into a mystery. But the real shock was yet to come. Sometime later, data from a Malaysian military radar revealed a profound change in the direction of the entire investigation. The MH370 didn't just disappear, it turned. Yes, the plane suddenly changed its course, and that too, in a completely opposite direction from Beijing. The plane turned west, returned over Malaysia, and then began heading towards the Andaman Sea. But why? If the plane had a technical fault, why didn't the pilot declare an emergency? If it had been hijacked, why was there no call? If it was an accident, how did the plane continue flying for hours? And the biggest question, if the MH370 was flying for so long, why didn't anyone see it? This is where technology enters the story that changed the course of the entire investigation. Satellite data. Even though the plane had disappeared from civilian radar, it hadn't gone completely silent. The plane was periodically sending small signals to a satellite network. These signals were called handshakes, and these handshakes would later become the most crucial link in the MH370 investigation. But at that time, the world didn't know it yet. All it knew was that a modern airliner had vanished from the face of the Earth when 39 people on board. Slowly, the news spread across the globe. Breaking news began to play on TV channels. Families were crying at airports. Rumors began to spread on social media. Some said the plane had crashed into the sea. Others said it had been hijacked. And some even began to suggest that the plane might have been part of a secret military operation. But what was the truth? Was MH370 still flying at that time? Were the people on board alive? Did the pilot deliberately divert the plane? Or did something happen inside the cockpit that the world still has no answer to? Because soon, satellite signals, military radar, and cockpit mysteries would complicate the story so much that MH370 would no longer be just a missing plane, but would become the biggest aviation mystery in modern history. MH370 was no longer just a missing aircraft. It had become a mystery, with each new clue raising ever more frightening questions. Because now the world knew that the plane hadn't suddenly disappeared. It had been flying for hours. But where and why? As the investigation progressed, the world's leading aviation agencies, military experts, satellite engineers, and intelligence teams were engaged in solving this mystery. But the more they searched, the more mysterious MH370 became. First, investigators conducted a thorough analysis of Malaysian military radar data. And what emerged was shocking. MH370 hadn't simply changed direction. It had made several deliberate turns. This meant the plane's path appeared to be deliberately being flown. This wasn't an uncontrolled crash pattern. The plane first turned west, then flew over the Malay Peninsula, headed toward the Andaman Sea, and then disappeared. Disappeared. But then came a piece of information that shocked the entire world. British satellite company Marsat reported that MH370 hadn't gone completely silent. Despite the plane's communication system being down, it had sent periodic signals to the satellite network. These were called satellite handshakes. Now, a very important point is important to understand here. These signals were not voice communications. They contained neither passenger conversations nor cockpit recordings. These were just small technical pings, automatically sent to check the connection between the aircraft and the satellite. But these tiny signals became the most crucial link in the MH370 investigation because these handshake revealed a shocking truth. The plane had been flying for several hours. This means that MH370 remained in the air for nearly 7 hours, even after disappearing from radar at around 1:21 a.m. The question now became even more frightening. If the plane had been flying for so long, who was in the cockpit? Were the passengers still alive? Did the crew know where they were going? Or had everything on board the plane been destroyed by that time? Investigators began analyzing the plane's possible paths using satellite data, and this is where two large arcs emerged. A northern arc and a southern arc. The northern arc meant the plane might have headed toward Central Asia. But this route had radar systems from several countries, and none of them detected MH370. This gradually led investigators to a southern route. The Indian Ocean is one of the world's largest, most remote, and least explored oceanic regions. If MH370 had gone there, finding it would have been nearly impossible. But the mystery didn't end there. As the investigation progressed, questions shifted from the plane to the pilot. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah was an experienced pilot with a calm nature and a highly respected personality. However, the investigation revealed that he had an advanced flight simulator at his home. This wasn't unusual. Many pilots keep simulators for training and practice. However, when investigators retrieved the simulator data, a disturbing detail emerged. It showed flight paths that led towards the southern Indian Ocean, the very direction where investigators were now searching for MH370. As soon as this information came to light, a theory began to spread rapidly around the world. Was it pilot suicide? Did the captain deliberately veer off course? Was the cockpit depressurized? Did the passengers gradually become unconscious? And then the plane continued to fly on autopilot until it ran out of fuel. This theory was terrifying, but it wasn't completely impossible for investigators. Aviation history had already seen similar cases where pilots had deliberately crashed aircraft. But the MH370 case had a major problem. There was no solid proof, no suicide note, no final message, no clear evidence, and this is what deepened the mystery. Some experts proposed other theories. Perhaps the aircraft caught fire, perhaps there was an electrical failure, perhaps the crew became incapacitated. But even these theories had problems. The aircraft's route change seemed highly controlled. It wasn't random. Then came the hijacking theory. Had someone taken control of the cockpit? But then the question arose, if a hijacking had occurred, why were there no demands? Why was there no political message? Why was no terrorist organization identified? Some even started conspiracy theories. Some claimed the plane was secretly landed at a military base. Others claimed it was shot down, and even alien theories began circulating online. But investigators needed facts, and they were still scarce. Meanwhile, the families of the 239 people on board lived each day between hope and fear. Some wondered if the passengers might still be alive. Others hoped the plane had made an emergency landing. But days passed, and no answers were found. Then began the largest search operation in history. Dozens of countries, hundreds of ships, military aircraft, deep-sea sonar systems, satellite imagery, and the entire Indian Ocean was transformed into a search zone. But the problem was that the Indian Ocean was no small area. This area spanned millions of square kilometers, and investigators had only satellite calculations, not an exact location. Still, search teams held out hope that they might find a black box signal, because an aircraft's black box stores flight data and cockpit voice recordings, and if it were found, the entire mystery might be solved. But the Indian Ocean was slowly revealing its true potential to the world. Investigators were soon to realize that the ocean doesn't just swallow things, it can also hide them forever. This was the turning point, where the story of MH370 would transform from a missing plane mystery to an impossible hunt because now the question wasn't just what happened to MH370, but will we ever find it? The Indian Ocean is one of the world's deepest and least understood oceanic regions. If MH370 really crashed here, investigators weren't just searching for a missing plane. They were searching for a nearly impossible truth buried beneath the sea. But at that time, the world still held hope. Investigators believed that if they could find the black box signals, the entire mystery could be solved. Now, it's important to understand a crucial point. Every commercial aircraft has two main black boxes. The first is the flight data recorder, which records the aircraft's technical information. The second is the cockpit voice recorder, which records sounds from inside the cockpit. Both of these devices are equipped with underwater locator beacons, which can send signals for approximately 30 days after impact. These signals were the search team's greatest hope. But the problem was that the Indian Ocean was no ordinary place. The sea depths exceeded 6,000 meters in many places. There were huge underwater mountains, strong currents, and areas that had not yet been mapped in detail. Nevertheless, search teams around the world were moving forward, grasping each possibility. Australia, Malaysia, China, the United States, and many other countries became part of this mission. Gradually, it was becoming the most expensive search operation in aviation history. Satellite imagery was analyzed. Ocean drift models were created. Sonar systems began scanning the seabed. But the MH370 was still nowhere to be found. Then, in April 2014, an incident occurred that raised hope around the world. Search teams detected underwater signals. The signals were on the same frequency as the black box beacons. Breaking news spread across the world, perhaps. The MH370 had finally been found. Ships were sent to that location. Underwater drones were deployed. But as the investigation progressed, hope slowly began to fade. Investigators found no wreckage, no fuselage, no bodies, no anything. No. And then experts concluded that the signals were likely not from the MH370's black box. The world had returned to normal. Time passed in darkness. But one thing continued to trouble investigators: if MH370 had crashed into the sea, where was the debris? Some part of such a large aircraft should have been visible on the surface. But nothing was found for months, and this only fueled conspiracy theories. Some suggested the plane had been secretly hidden somewhere. Others claimed governments were concealing the truth. But then, about a year and a half later, a discovery on a small island in the Indian Ocean transformed the MH370 mystery into physical reality for the first time. In July 2015, a large aircraft part was found on the beach on Runyon Island, a small French island located east of Africa. When experts analyzed it, they reached a shocking conclusion: it was a flaperon, a part of an aircraft wing, and it belonged to a Boeing 777. Gradually, forensic analysis confirmed that the debris belonged to MH370. For the first time, the world had proof that the plane had indeed ended up in the Indian Ocean. But with this came another disturbing realization. If debris had reached this far, it meant that ocean currents had carried debris thousands of kilometers away. This meant the actual crash site was likely still hidden in some dark recess in the ocean. Subsequently, more debris was found in Mozambique, Madagascar, Tanzania, and various parts of the African coastline. These included aircraft interior panels, wing fragments, and cabin parts. But the most surprising thing was that, compared to such a large aircraft, very little debris was found. No main fuse box, no major body sections, no black box, and most importantly, no cockpit voice recording. This meant the world still didn't know what happened inside the plane in its final hours. Gradually, investigators combined satellite data, fuel calculations, ocean drift models, and radar information to create a probable crash zone. The Southern Ocean, a remote area west of Australia, was difficult to search. Autonomous underwater vehicles were dispatched, the seafloor was mapped, and thousands of square kilometers were scanned. But the ocean remained silent. Then, in 2017, after nearly 3 years of searching, the official underwater search was suspended, a moment that devastated families. It was now officially believed that the MH370 might never be found. But the mystery wasn't over yet. Some experts still believed the search area might be wrong. Some theorized that the pilot might have taken control of the aircraft at the last moment. Others suggested the plane might have entered a controlled glide. And if that were true, the crash site could have been farther away than originally calculated. Then, in 2018, a private company, Ocean Infinity, launched a new search. They used advanced underwater drones and AI-based mapping technology. But even after months of searching, nothing was found. By now, MH370 had become the world's most expensive aviation mystery. But perhaps the most disturbing thing was that despite modern technology, a Boeing 777 was still missing, and this question began to haunt the entire world. If a modern aircraft can disappear like this today, is our technology as advanced as we think? But perhaps the most frightening part of the MH370 mystery wasn't the plane's disappearance. Rather, it was that the more investigators tried to understand the mystery, the deeper it became. Because now, the question wasn't just where the plane was. Now the question was, what happened inside that plane in its final hours? And this leads us to the most controversial part of this story, where theory, psychology, aviation, science, and unanswered questions were about to collide. MH370 was no longer just an aviation mystery. It had become a global obsession. People around the world, experts, journalists, pilots, and conspiracy theorists were all searching for answers to the same question. What exactly happened to MH370 that night? But the more the investigation progressed, the clearer it became that there was perhaps no simple answer to this mystery. In the MH370 case, every theory offered some evidence,
yet each had significant flaws. The most popular theory was the pilot suicide theory. According to this theory, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah deliberately deviated from the plane's route, turned off the transponder, disabled communication systems, and then flew the aircraft toward the southern Indian Ocean, Indian Ocean. Experts supporting this theory say that the MH370's route was not random. 1. Plane made precise turns and passed through several significant blind spots. This behavior seemed typical of an experienced pilot. Investigators then cited cockpit simulator data which showed flight paths pointing towards the Indian Ocean. Some aviation experts suggested that the cockpit may have been depressurized, meaning the oxygen in the cabin was gradually reduced. In such a situation, passengers and crew could have become unconscious. This is known as hypoxia in the aviation world. Hypoxia is extremely dangerous because a person gradually becomes disoriented, often without even realizing they are about to faint. Some experts believe that perhaps the passengers quietly became unconscious and the aircraft continued to fly on autopilot until the fuel ran out. This theory was chilling, and perhaps that's why it gained worldwide attention. But there was a major problem. There was no direct evidence in Iraq. No suicide note. No final confession. No cockpit recording. And most importantly, Captain Zahari's family and close associates always maintained that he was not mentally unstable. His aviation record was excellent. No serious warning signs against him were officially proven. This theory was possible, but not proven. Then came the hijacking theory. Did a passenger take over the aircraft? Investigators checked that the passengers' backgrounds. Were their passports checked? Travel histories were analyzed, and the investigation revealed that 2 passengers were traveling with stolen passports. Initially, this spread fear throughout the world. People thought it might be a terrorist hijacking, but later the investigation revealed that the 2 passengers were asylum seekers, not terrorists. This lead also gradually weakened. Then some experts proposed a mechanical failure theory. Perhaps an electrical fire broke out in the aircraft. Perhaps the communication systems failed. Perhaps the crew was busy handling the emergency, and the aircraft went in the wrong direction.
But here again, the same question arises. If it was a mechanical failure, why was the aircraft changing course so controlled? Why did it make specific turns? And most importantly, how did communication completely stop? Some even suggested that the MH370 might have been shot down accidentally. But no credible evidence was ever found to support this. Then an explosion of internet conspiracy theories began. Some claimed the plane landed at a secret military base. Others claimed governments were hiding the truth. Some theories even claimed a cyber hijacking, and even alien abduction theories spread on social media. But aviation investigators kept saying one thing again and again. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and the evidence was still incomplete. This is why the MH370 remains officially unsolved. But this incident taught the world a significant lesson. Even modern aviation systems, which we considered almost perfect, are not completely foolproof. After MH370, many changes were made in the aviation industry. Aircraft tracking systems were improved. Satellite monitoring was increased. Emphasis was placed on real-time aircraft tracking. Because the world realized that if a Boeing 777 could disappear, then there was a major weakness somewhere in global aviation systems. But even greater than the technology was the impact on the human level. 239 people, 239 stories, 239 families. Some parents still wait for their children. Some children lost their parents. Some people still have no closure because the crash site has not been found. The bodies have not been found. The black box has not been found. And when a tragedy remains unanswered, the pain never ends. It remains unfinished. And perhaps this is why MH370 became not just an aviation mystery, it also became an emotional mystery. A question the whole world once answered. But even today, all these years later, somewhere in the depths of the Indian Ocean, MH370 likely still exists, silent in the darkness, concealing the ultimate truth of that night. And perhaps this is the most terrifying thing about this story. Even in the 21st century, With satellites, AI, advanced radar, and modern technology, we don't fully understand what happened in the sky that night, Uchan. But perhaps the biggest mystery of this story isn't the plane itself. Rather, it's that the more advanced our technology becomes, the more we realize that events beyond our understanding can still occur in this world. And every time a plane flies in the dark of night, a question inevitably arises in many people's minds. Will the truth about MH370 ever be revealed? Or will it remain buried in the depths of the ocean forever? Because even today, there's only one answer to the biggest aviation mystery in modern history. We still don't know what really happened to Malaysia Airlines flight MH370.